our 77-year-old grandmother is an athlete. Are you?
It's a good question.
It's a good question. Big Jan is quite the athlete. She'd probably actually be really mad at us for talking about and opening a video talking about her. But our point here is, or that we're trying to make, is that everyone's an athlete, really. Athlete's a mindset, and that's something that we are firm believers of with our training, with anyone that we work with, as young as 5, 6 years old, all the way up through 80, 85 years old and plus. So, we work a lot with similar populations, but different at the same time. He sees a lot more of a day-to-day, youth and high school population, but still works with a lot of our adult and youth athletes over at the Arsenal. On the flip side, I do work with a handful of high school athletes and different age athletes, but I tend to see a little bit more on the older side or the adult athlete side. So we're going to go through today and talk about what being an athlete means. Anything else you want to add to before we really get rolling?
Yeah, just like you said, being an athlete, it doesn't necessarily mean that you play a sport or you play multiple sports. It's more of a mindset, and the way of training and training like an athlete gives you the options and the freedom that you can, if you decide you want to go out and do something maybe you haven't done in a long time, whether that be play a pickup game of basketball with some of your friends or go out and take a 2-mile run when you haven't ran in forever. Like, just having that ability day after day of training like an athlete, as we were saying, is going to make those things a lot easier. So that's where we say you don't necessarily have to play sports to be an athlete. It's a mindset. It's so that your body can always be capable to basically do whatever you want it to do, to an extent.
Or what you need it to do. I mean, heaven forbid someone is trying to attack you, or you got a big dog chasing you and attacking you. You're not sure what's going to happen, and you don't have a big muscular frame, or you're not, confident you can overcome your opponent. Do you have the ability to run away without getting hurt? Right? And if you fall down, can you get back up and run away and not get hurt? Right? So, we're going to go into what some of that entails. I always like to start, if you don't know who Bill Bowerman is, you should. I'm sure everyone knows the company Nike. That's a pretty common name. Bill Bowerman was the co-founder of Nike. He has a quote that I really try to live by, is that if you have a body, you're an athlete. And that's something that I really try to not only live by myself, but preach to anyone that I work with. We're all an athlete of life. And so one of my favorite examples of that, there's a commercial that's been rolling around the last few years at Christmas time of an old man, doing his kettlebell lifting and trying to work out in the mornings, and people think, what is this guy doing? He's crazy. And at the end of the commercial, he's lifting his daughter up above his head so that way she can put the star on top of the tree. That's being an athlete of life right there, right? He's not prepping for a competition. He's not prepping for some weight, specific weight goal. He wants to be able to pick his daughter up and let her put the star up on the top of the tree. And so when it comes to training athletes, we have a lot of commonalities that we use with training, but you're going to see a lot of differences within too. So one of the big things that we really believe in is that all athletes are going to use what we call the 6 foundational movement patterns in some way, shape, or form. How they're programmed together, sets, reps, total volume, tempos, certain blocks, all that you'll get in a video later on down the road. Right now, we want to talk about just the use of these movements. And so when we're talking about them, you've got...
First one is just a push. I don't know, is there any specific order of these?
I usually have an order, but you're going to listen. So,
so we got push and then pull. I'm sure I'm going in not the same order.
That's all right.
Eric. I was just thinking upper body than lower body, kind of.
Yeah.
Number 3 is going to be squat. Arguably one of the most important ones.
Yeah.
Number 4 is going to be hinge. And then 5 is lunge. And last but not least, in my opinion, probably the most important one is a carry.
Also, just say bracing. Oops, if I can spell here. And because a lot of people will talk about rotation being one too, and I'll go a little bit more, he may go a little bit more into depth of what we mean here, because rotation will fall into this category. Rotation, anti-rotation, flexion, all movements of the spine, just being able to stay stable. So these are what we call the 6 foundational movement patterns, right? And so pushing, pulling, right? We want to be able to do a vertical push, a vertical pull, right? So I'm doing an overhead press and a pull up or a pull down. Same thing if I'm going horizontal, bench press, dumbbell bench press, push up, a row, seated row, an inverted body weight row, something of that nature. Squat, that's basically just teaching how to sit down and stand up, right? We want to be able to get up on and off the toilet easily and well and it not be a max effort issue, you know. That's something we actually do see or have found that individuals as they get older and less fit, sitting down and standing up is a max effort for them. Well, what's your max squat?
505.
505. So when you sit down and stand up at 505, do you have a nice calm heart rate? No, that thing's pretty high in that brief period when you're sitting down and standing up and coming out for a minute or so, right? And so if you were having to do that every time you sat on and off the toilet or off the couch,
I'd be struggling.
you'd be struggling. That'd be a long day. That'd be a long and very tiring day. So squatting, teach you how to sit down and stand up better. Are you more resilient at it, right? Hinging, arguably, this is where we can go back and forth a little bit, but you're going to find we're going to put these in the top two. Being able to pick something up off the ground well, right? Can I pick something up off the ground, keep my spine neutral, load my legs and my hips? Lunge, am I able to balance, stabilize, and be strong on one leg? This is important because when we walk, we run, a lot of movements are done on one leg. If you're talking an actual athlete, when you're running on the field, you're almost always on one leg when you're actually moving in space, right? And then carrying and bracing. We use carrying for a lot of different tools, but we use a lot of tools to work on that bracing aspect of, you know, keeping the spine stable in all positions. We often think of staying stable as just this nice, good, neutral posture position, and that's important, but I also need to be strong in these other positions. And can I actually maintain tension in that in my abdominal pressure? Oh, I get my words mixed up a little here. Abdominal pressure as I move, so that way my body can still move through space well. So as we go into each one here, we're not going to go super in depth with anything, but give you a couple examples of each, a little more in depth, how you can apply them, and then you know, like I said, we'll have another video out on sets, reps, adaptations for what you're looking for later on as well. So. You want to go ahead and start us off with push?
Yeah. So with push here, it kind of as you explained a couple minutes ago, vertical or horizontal. Vertical just means up and down. Horizontal means more of a laying down or side to side. So the vertical push, and this can be dumbbells, barbell. I mean, really any kind of resistance implement that you want to use. But most simple form is going to be a overhead press, just a strict overhead press. We're here. Press up, hands get behind our head a little bit, come back down. A little bit more advanced version of that would be a push press. So using your legs a little bit, still driving that weight up, but finishing tall with our arms, like I said, back a little bit where our biceps kind of right by our ear. A horizontal press is going to, or horizontal push is going to be more of your bench press, whether that be dumbbell, barbell, kettlebell, once again, any weighted implement that you're trying to use. But I guess I skipped the simplest version of that, which everybody should be able to do, is push-ups. I'm amazed on a daily basis the number of high school kids that I see that struggle to do push-ups, yet they think they want to be able to bench 315 plus. But they're not the cool thing to do. They're not sexy, so people like to neglect push-ups. But arguably one of, if not probably the most important, especially horizontal push that you can do, but just push in general. You don't need any equipment to do it. You can obviously add a band, add for resistance or assistance. You can add weight on your back to make it harder. You can put it on an incline or a decline, so it makes it easier and harder. So there's multiple ways you can do a push-up, whether you need to make it easier, scale down, or harder. And so that's where I would say with the push, arguably one of the better options that you can do.
A little quick disclaimer too, if you have pain through doing some sort of range of motion, you should probably get looked at by a professional, whether that be a PT, a chiropractor, you know, a strength conditioning professional. I mean, there's a lot of things that are musculoskeletal issues that we can help and fix and correct. They're just due to a lot of times us getting stuck in certain postures and then not opening up or using these ranges that we tend to lose as we age, right? If you don't use it, you lose it. So just a little disclaimer, if you have pain through a certain range of motion or with a certain certain position, like this is a very broad spectrum. So when you have pain, you're gonna have a more individual issue that you got to pay a little more attention to. So like the vertical position, a lot of people can't, especially as they age, they don't do a lot of things overhead, so they struggle to get here. And so you can do things like a landmine press that's kind of an in between, an incline press on a bench, things like that, and build that strength here. And over time, I can slowly scoop myself in on that landmine, so it's a little more vertical. I could do some seated presses, getting myself a little more vertical to progress that over time. If I've lost that range of motion, I'm pain free. But know that when you have loss of range of motion or pain in a movement, you still got to find a way to still implement this to maintain that well-rounded body and that well-rounded resiliency of the body to make sure you can maintain that athlete of life mentality in your training.
Moving on, number 2 is the pull. So still going vertical and horizontal. Vertical pull, your top 2 options really, with different variations of course, would be a pull up, holding onto a bar, pull yourself up to it and back down, or a pull down, where you're sitting in what would probably be some sort of cable machine, grab whatever handle version you have and pulling the weight down to you. Basically, easy way to think of a pull is weight is away from you and you're pulling it towards you. So on a pull up, your weight is down, you're pulling yourself up to the bar, to the implement. On a lat pull down, you have the bar that is hooked up to the weight, you were pulling the weight down to you. So bringing yourself closer to whatever you were holding on to, I guess is an easier way to put it. Horizontal, like you said before, multiple different types of rows that you can do with this. So it can be a dumbbell row, a barbell row, a seated row, a landmine row. Once again, basically where the weight implement, whether you're straight forward or hinged over, is away from you and you are pulling it to you. Anything to add on to that?
In regards to pushing and pulling, what are some, shoot, I had a question I wanted to ask you. I don't remember now. No, go ahead.
Come back to it.
Yeah, we'll come back to it. That's ADHD for you, man.
So number 3, squat. All kinds of options on that, but as we said, in its simplest form is sitting down and standing back up, or getting up from a seated position. Obviously, your most basic form is going to be an air squat. If you're holding weight in front of you, a goblet squat. You can front squat, you can back squat, you can overhead squat, pistol squat, Bulgarian split squat, anything and everything, to where you are sitting down in some way, shape, or form, and then coming back up.
Yeah. The single leg stuff we'll get a little bit more into here. That probably falls a little more in there, but like squat variation, we're referring generally more to bilateral, but like if you have like a lot of pain or dysfunction, I'll do this with a lot of people that have knee or hip issues, like we will use a lot of unilateral squatting still and lunging. We use them in different manners to focus a little more on the knee, a little more on the hip in certain ways. So their squat may still be unilateral, not just bilateral, but more often than not, this will be kind of a bilateral movement if you have a healthy, well-rounded aspect.
So number 4, the hinge. What most people would see as a deadlift is going to be your most common exercise that people are going to perform here. But as he just wrote on there, it's being able to pick things up off the ground. That could be as simple as he drops his marker down and needs to bend over to pick it up.
Safely.
Or, there we go, safety first. Or you have a loaded barbell with 500, 600, 700 pounds and you are picking it up. I've actually seen a lot of people that when they're doing, say, a barbell deadlift, they know how to brace, they know how to move properly, but then they go to pick up something that's 10, 20, 30 pounds off the ground and don't do it right, and that's how they jack up their back or create some sort of injury. So being able to just hinge properly in any way, shape, or form that you need to perform whatever task it is. Like I said, it could be as simple as I drop my marker on the ground, I need to bend over and pick it back up, or my 2-year-old daughter's lying on the floor crying and it's bedtime, so I have to bend over and pick her up. Or it's max deadlift day. So all of those are basically the same movement in the hinge. It's just a matter of keeping the back nice and flat, moving at the hips or where the hip crease is, coming back up from there. So a lot more into it than that, but as a basic form of it, that's what we're looking at.
Good mornings are another good way too. I mean, you can load it, on the back. You can load the safety bar so it's anterior loaded, so you're just going to work the back of the posterior chain a little more. We are working on a hinge. you are getting a more internal rotation of the hip in your end range. So you want to really try to stay stacked with the body. When I go into that hinge, I don't want to open out as much. That's more on the Olympic weightlifting side, so you'll hear me say that differently if we're working there. But a true hinge, right? I'm here, getting this internal rotation of the hip, maintaining this neutral spine posture like he's talking about. And so making sure that we have that hip capacity without letting our knees go forward. As I move through the hips, I should be able to keep a pretty vertical or perpendicular shin. And the more that shin stays vertical or perpendicular, I'm gonna feel my hamstrings really get some length and my glutes get some length and line up so they can contract and generate power and force like we need them to run, jump, walk, sit, stand, anything we want them to, right? So it's a great posterior chain builder is just about any hinge movement if done correctly.
Moving on, number 5, we have the lunge, which, as he said earlier, is really just more of any type of single leg movement to work on balance, stability. Something as simple as walking or running, while you're not necessarily in your normal thought process of a lunge, you were having to balance and stabilize on one leg at a time when you do that. So yes, you had your normal lunge where you take a step forward. Not sure if I'll be in camera all the way on this, but coming back up. But even something as simple as a step up. You're here, I have to balance and stabilize on the one leg, and I'm coming up tall, coming back down. It's just a different variation that is put in that general or broad spectrum term of a lunge. But as it says up there, you're balancing, you're stabilizing on one leg at a time.
Put your leg back up before me like you're doing a step up. So something too to pay attention to when you're doing this is like, if I had him step back and I said, hey, I want you to really stand up and not let your knee come over your toe so much. If he did that, he's gonna focus and generate a lot more force for that hip. He's gonna drive a lot more through the hip. If I said, I want you to shift your knee over your toe until you feel that heel wanna come up, and then from there drive straight up, we're gonna get a lot more of the quad and the knee. So you can adjust that too based upon what you're trying to focus on or emphasize. You can also do the same thing from a lateral position, right? If I wanna work on a pistol squat, I can do it from a box position. Ooh, I don't know if I can do it in a boot. Yeah, see, so I can get down here, but if I were on flat ground, I wouldn't be able to get to the ground, right? So this allows me to still work on those postures, and positions a little better without having to get down as deep into that position or that against gravity, so I have something to help me hold my stability a little bit better. But you can do it on the ground too. That's a way to progress it oftentimes for people. Again, you can go a hinge-based lunge, you can go a knees over toe or ATG style, a split squat lunge. Both are great tools that I and he uses oftentimes. It just depends on the athlete and the situation. And what's the athlete have the capacity to do, right? So, you want to lead us into the last one?
Yep. Last one, we have carrying and bracing. Carrying is, in its simplest form, bringing the groceries in from the car. It can be dumbbells, plates, sandbags, kettlebells. If you're crazy enough to have the farmer's carry handles, you can load plates on, and it can be one arm, two arm, out in front of you, overhead, one up, one down as a Z carry, like almost in any type of carry you want to do. I mean, you can do whatever you want really with it, but it's moving weight from one place from A to B. One of the big things I love about carrying is a lot of times the different variation. You get your whole body challenged, but it challenges it in a different way. You get an offset load if you do a one-arm carry. So while a two-arm, you're going to feel a lot of your grip going, a lot of your upper back and shoulders. You flip that and you just do a one-arm carry. You've then turned it into a big oblique workout. Still getting some grip work, still getting some upper shoulder work there. But your ability to have to stabilize and not let that weight really pull you down, stay up nice and vertical, trains a whole different muscle group there. And then, but like I said, and this is something I really have just learned in the last couple of years of being a dad, having to carry my daughter. She's 2.5 years old now, and 35 to 40 pounds right now, which in the grand scheme of things isn't that heavy, but when I have to hold her for minutes upon minutes upon minutes, my arms get jacked, or I feel jacked, but my arms get tired.
Nice good old
my oblique gets tired. I'm not good about switching sides with her, so I hold her a lot on the left side. So that right oblique gets really tired just for me having to hold on to her. Plus, she's 2.5, so she's squirming and kicking around everywhere. Like, it's something I never even really considered until it started happening. That takes a lot of stability to be able to hold on there for that long.
Yeah, I mean that's the big point of racing. If you're carrying something moderately heavy or challenging through space, you have to work on being able to stabilize the spine, or you're not going to be able to move very well very quickly, or you're going to break down and feel pain pretty quickly, or a lot of discomfort. So rotation does fall into this. A lot of carries are going to work on a lot of anti-rotation work when you're offloading it with one side, or we're doing a sandbag carry, things like that. If we're working on true rotational work, I probably wouldn't do too much of that while carrying, but you can implement that in certain things like a lunge, a push, a pull. There's some things I'll do when I'm doing landmine work, when I'm working on push and pull, and where we're working on rotating through the T-spine, because that's a lot of where we want that rotation to be, is through the thoracic spine and not the lumbar spine. We want that lumbar spine to be nice, straight, stacked. There shouldn't be a lot of range of motion through there. One of the things that I have a certification through the Titleist Performance Institute, and they open up the certification by talking about Gray Cook and Mike Boyle, two very well-respected professionals in the sport performance and rehabilitation industry. Both talk about, or Mike Boyle asks Gray Cook, in very simple terms, can you explain to me how the body works, how body moves through space? And I'm going to botch it, but he says something along the lines of the body is an alternating system of, or a system of alternating segments of stable and mobile joint structures. So what that means, and if something is off in that system, then dysfunction and disaster is bound to happen. So what that means, if you're looking at Brandon here, from a joint structure, if we're working ground up, the foot here, the arch, that should be a nice stable joint. The more we can have a nice stable arch, height is more dependent on the person, but that is a very strong structure to push down into. Our ankle here should be a mobile joint. It should be able to glide and move around, flex and extend, pronate, inversion, eversion. As I move up the knee, it's really more designed to flex and extend. It shouldn't have a lot of movement besides that. So looking more at a stable joint. The hip joint is more of a ball and socket. It's supposed to have this big 360-degree range of motion. That's a mobile joint. The lumbar spine here is a stable joint. So we want that to be nice and stable. We don't want a lot of motion, especially rotationally, and even flexion extension under load through that lumbar spine. We want that to be pretty safe. Over our thoracic spine here, that middle section of the back, we want to be very mobile. We want to be able to flex and extend through that. We want to be able to rotate side to side, keeping our hips, or just being able to associate the hips and either keep them still as I move, so I'm moving through the spine and not having to move through the whole body. The scap should be a stable joint. The shoulder is basically the hip of the upper body. It's another ball and socket joint. Elbow is going to be a stable joint, just like the knee, and the wrist is meant to be a mobile joint, just like the ankle. So as you see, there's a sequence through the body. And as we sequence these movements, we need to make sure that we're using those joints and those movements correctly. If not, you are going to have issues. And if you are unsure or dealing with issues, just seek out a professional, all right? Seek out help, because that's not normal, and life's too short to not live pain-free and be healthy and do the things that you want to do, right? So hopefully this helps you guys. This is what we like to, like I said, live by with all our athletes. This is what our grandmother does. As we did say earlier in the video, our 77-year-old grandmother's an athlete. She actually comes to the Arsenal Fitness where we both work at, and does what we call our longevity class. She was kind of the one to get sparked up or the interest going. And it's a very booming class that we have going on right now. Geared to athletes 55 and above, but I think we have athletes up to 83 in there. I think the average age is in the low 70s. We're seeing incredible results. People being taken off medications, people being able to get up and out of their cars and chairs easier. It's just awesome the difference that we're seeing in these people's lives. On the flip side, we've always done this with athletes, right? You know that it's working with athletes, but we just think that's normal. They're young, they're healthy, it should be that way. It should be that way when you're older too. It's the fact that we don't use it, we lose it. So, anything you want to add as we're wrapping up or in closing here?
Just reminding, like we said at the beginning, that being an athlete is more of a mindset. You don't have to play one or multiple sports to be an athlete. It's about being able to basically perform any daily task that you may need to. So that may be something that is performing a sport, pickup game of something with your friends, or that can be something is like what I talked about with Carrie, bringing the groceries in. Have to do that in one trip. But
Man law.
But being able to perform each of these Patterns, yep. So being able to perform each of these patterns in any and multiple variations, that is how you are an athlete. And it can be scaled, some can be better than others, but at least making the attempt to work through all of these patterns, range of motions, and techniques of exercises is how you consider yourself an athlete.
Now, a lot of it, like you said, is mindset. Do you want to let life own you, or do you want to own life, right? The average, I was reading something the other day that the average life expectancy is in the low 70s for most people in the U.S. now, or the U.S. But their health in the last 9 years, on average, they have to have somebody that's taking care of them. So their last 9 years of life are not very fulfilling in a lot of ways with things that I would imagine most people want to do. So if you want to be able to own your life and own the things that you do in your life, and I would say consider yourself an athlete of life and get to hitting these 6 foundational movements.
Yep.
Get jacked. Check us out. Hopefully you guys like this. And fill us in with some more content that you guys like to see. We'd be happy to fill you in. We really like to just kind of go with the flow on a lot of content and just really talk for too long, especially me, but I'll let him open up. You see he gets rolling a little bit too. So anyways, give us some feedback and let us know how this works, guys.